Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I'm April Montgomery Goble, and I'm the Executive Director of KIPP Chicago. And I'm really excited to be here today to facilitate this conversation. It's a conversation that I feel like is really important. So I want to start by talking a little bit about why I'm passionate about conscious media and this content and this panel today. I was a principal 15 years ago, and I recall a moment on a Sunday afternoon where I got a call, and there was a birthday party, and there was a conflict at the birthday party. Monday morning, I was able to bring the kids in, and we did a creative project together, an art project together, to help them resolve the conflict. I think about how different the reality is now for children in schools when there's an undercurrent often that's happening outside of school on social media that oftentimes educators don't quite know what to do and how to be proactive around resolving those challenges. So I'm really excited. I think we've got some of the best panelists here to lead this conversation. I have to say I was quite intimidated when we had our first Zoom call with them. So I'm going to start by just anchoring us in what our common definition is of media consciousness. So it's a person's awareness of themselves and the world around them based on the information they consume via news, books, images, social media, and more. So I'd like now to turn it over to the panelists and have them each introduce themselves, share their name and organization.
Hi, I am Linda Burch. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer and a co-founder of Common Sense Media. And we are a nonprofit that's all about helping kids and families and educators navigate an ever-evolving digital world. And we do that in three ways. We rate, we educate, and we advocate. To the parents in the room, you may know us as the site that you go to when you want to get a ratings and a review of any kind of media, from movies to TVs to books to games to apps, and as of this month, to podcasts, so that you can select great media for your kids that's age appropriate. We also rate and review ed tech from a pedagogical standpoint and how well it protects privacy. We have an education program that is a K-12 digital literacy and citizenship curriculum that's currently taught by 1.3 million teachers in 65,000 schools across the country and around the globe. And we're also advocates for media, technology, kids, and education, the intersection of those things. So we're big on protecting kids' privacy. We have been big leaders in closing the digital divide and ensuring that there's funding that's going to the states and to districts so that every kid has connectivity and a device, and every family has digital skills training. And lastly, we care deeply about kids' well-being in the digital age and are putting pressure on both the tech industry and policymakers to create the guardrails that will protect kids online so that they have safe and healthy and equitable experiences in the internet world.
Thank you. My name is Brittany Jones, and I'm with KIPP Chicago. My title is Managing Director of Justice Initiatives.
You can say a little bit more.
I am ready. I'm ready to dive into this conversation. What I will say is KIPP Chicago has been doing a ton of work around helping students realize all of the possibilities that there are for them, both inside the classroom and outside the classroom, through our Whole Child Initiative. And so a lot of the work that we'll be talking about today is about the work that we're doing to really set students up for success in terms of their identity development, their social-emotional skills, their ability to navigate life, again, both in and out of the classroom. And so we're doing a lot of work to make sure that they know who they are and they're well-equipped to go out into the world and make an impact.
Hi, everyone. My name is Marc Brackett. I am a professor at Yale University in the Child Studies Center and the founder and director of the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence. My primary work is in this field of social and emotional learning. We have created an approach called Ruler that's now in about 4,000 schools across the United States and other countries. I think the relevance to this is I've done a lot of consulting work for organizations like Facebook and Twitter and Pinterest on how do you integrate the principles of emotional intelligence to do a number of things. I think the first is to make a product that's emotionally intelligent. But importantly, as we know, children have pretty difficult experiences on these products. And so what do you do when you are encountered by a bully online? How do you handle your feelings? How do you report it? What is the company's responsibility for supporting that particular child? And I'll just stop there.
Great. I'm intimidated as well, by the way. I'm Manjit Sareen. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Natterhub. So Natterhub's a safe social media educational platform for the classroom, and we teach 5 to 11-year-olds how to be safe, kind, savvy digital citizens. Natterhub's the education that comes before children get their first device or before they go unaided onto the internet. The unique concept that we have is that children learn by doing. So it's a safe place where they get to role play, learn lessons, make mistakes, repeat 1,000 times, and learn everything before they jump on the internet.
That's awesome. My name is Michael Preston. Hi, everybody. I'm the executive director of the Joan, Ganz, Cooney Center, which is a small nonprofit research lab based at Sesame Workshop in New York, New York. We are named after Joan, Ganz, Cooney, who was the visionary co-founder of Sesame Street and Children's Television Workshop in the 1960s. And the way I like to think of our role in the universe is bringing her initial inspiration to leverage the emerging media of the day for the best interests of the child. And so the way we do that is go outside of Sesame. I like to think of us as bringing Sesame into the world. So methods that place the best interests of the child first, that develop new methods through partnership with researchers and other stakeholders in making better products for kids in the digital space, for learning, for well-being, for other things like that. Some of our work includes a partnership with the Corporation for Public Broadcasting to help the public media sector think differently about engaging tween and teen audiences who we consider a missing audience for public media. We have some well-being work underway, as well as the beginnings of a kind of a design shop for creators who are trying to make products that have an impact on kids and know what it is and can measure it, as well as methods that bring in diverse voices in their process. So that is our work. Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
Well, I'm glad you all are here. And I want to say this before I forget, in case I don't say it at the end. I'd like to make a plug for all the educators in the room to make sure that you go back and look at their body of work. So I was very familiar with Marc's work. In fact, some of the educators in here, you've used the mood meter both personally and in our schools. So I love what Marc is doing. I didn't have familiarity with the other panelists, obviously Brittany, but the other panelists. In the course of me preparing for this panel, I've learned a ton, and I didn't know all of these resources were out there. So if you are an educator looking for resources, read their blogs, go to their website. There's a ton of information there that I had no idea was even there. So I just want to make sure I say that. I'm going to start with Marc and Brittany, and then others can chime in. Let's talk about your role. Your roles are both focused on kids' identity development. You have a front row seat to how kids are experiencing the rapid evolution of technology. Tell us what you're noticing most recently about the impact on kids' awareness of themselves and others.
Great. Really great question, April. I believe what we're seeing on the ground is obviously students are, have returned to school this year after, 2 years at home with laptops. And we see the impact of that almost immediately as they navigate being back in the classroom. When you're able to curate a social media presence, a social media appearance, a social media persona, and now you're in the classroom and you are trying to get back to really using normal social cues, making eye contact, being able to have a conversation, form friendships. We can see that it's been very difficult for a lot of our students, even being behind a mask, right? Where there are those insecurities of just even being in person and showing your face and your smile and connecting in really natural ways. And so we see students struggling with that every day as they relearn, as they reintegrate into the school environment. And so we also see from another lens, during this last 2 years, we've had kind of a political climate that our students have been aware of, right? We see a lot of conversations about a lot of conversations that I think sometimes are unintended, right, for our kids to see and be a part of. And so we see them grappling with that and how to engage with what's going on in the news media and what's going on around them. One example I will say, as we talked about this with some of the other KIPP staff, is we had a student that we lost recently, and we lost a student to gun violence. And we found out about this student's life being lost through our students reporting it from what they saw in the news media and print media. And just the fact that our students that we lost, their life was not honored. The humanity of their life and who they were was not honored in the way they were talked about and written about. And so we see students reporting this back, and they, are wondering how they engage with this, how they grapple with this, and the triggers, and the impact of that trauma of learning about something like that, but also the way in which it was reported, right? And so we're just seeing a lot. Our students have a lot of questions, and they have a lot of concerns about, what their place is in this media climate. And so I'll just stop there. I have a ton of more examples, but I would just say we're seeing them struggle to engage off of social media, off of computers, and reintegrate. And we're also seeing them have questions about the climate in which they are living. So, Marc?
I'm trying to process everything you said.
I know you got something, Marc.
What she said. I'm going to go a little broader right now, which is that, so we've done quite a bit of research during the pandemic about how parents are feeling, how teachers are feeling, and how kids are feeling. And, what I'll tell you is that about 75% of the emotional lives of people are spent feeling unpleasant feelings right now. The anxiety, the stress, the frustration, the overwhelm for the adults, the frustration and boredom for children. And it's taking a toll on people's wellness. I wrote this book, it's called Permission to Feel, and just in the last month, I've had 7 parents reach out to me because their children have committed suicide. And they're saying, my kid was popular, my kid was a superstar, an athlete. We don't know how this happened. And so for me, and I want to make sure I'm not coming off as judgmental at all about this, but what I've noticed, and I think our Surgeon General, if you heard him speak yesterday, which I thought was just incredible, is that we are a society that is connected, but not connected. And so people are reporting endless levels of loneliness and disconnection. And we're doing a study right now on the use of social media and time spent online. And what we're finding is that even with students who report high levels of social connectedness online, they don't report higher levels of happiness. And so while we may have an illusion that we are connected, the research is not really showing that, because people's sense of well-being is not enhanced by those types of online interactions for the most part. Of course, there are nuances that I can get into, but that's what I'm going to say.
Thank you. This next question is for all of you. It's more of a discussion question. So how can parents and educators take a more proactive stance to help kids develop strong media awareness and literacy?
So I'll jump in there, shall I? So 2 things, I think, for educators, if I focus on educators. One would be to share knowledge about the online space. And secondly, I think to develop the soft skills that underpin digital citizenship. Those are the 2 things that I think I would say that we need to focus on. If we jump into knowledge, based on our research, we found that educators need support. Sometimes children just seem to know more. And in the UK, definitely, some of the teachers are a little bit intimidated because the teachers just, the children know more, and it's just trying to keep on top of what's going on. So we've made sure that we've got extensive lesson notes, we've got a structure, we've got high quality content. So I would just say as educators that you follow a system with great content, whether it's Common Sense, whether it's us or whoever. It's just having a great system that you can work with. About Natterhub, we've got a badge system, so we follow 8 badges across elementary years, and basically the children are fully assessed towards digital independence, and they cover all aspects of online safety and media literacy. So we go deep, and we go deeper than the UK curriculum, which is actually quite deep. So our lessons are anywhere from what's an emoji, what happens when you receive a certain emoji, what is the right amount of time to respond to something, what happens if you don't get that message back straight away, the difference between online identity versus real life identity, and so on, a complete mix. So that's all great, so that's the knowledge, but I think it is very difficult for educators to keep on top of every single platform, every single app. It's just how do you keep on top of what every single child is doing, which is why as a company we focus on the behavior. That's the most important thing for us, which is the soft skills that every single child needs before they jump on the internet. And like I mentioned at the beginning, every single child learns best, by doing. Every adult learns best by doing. You need to have a go, you need to have a play, and that's why we've created a safe place where children can have a go, make mistakes, and really in our newsfeed area, that's where teachers can actually award children with stars, which they love, and boost them when they can actually, they've basically made an achievement with one of the soft skills. So that's how we operate. We've got 8 badges, just a few of those badges I'll mention, because we're talking about media awareness and media literacy. The Question It badge, when a child posts something about questioning or critical thinking skills or querying something, they get a star. And it's like, that's how it works. There's a Feel It badge, which is my favorite badge, which is being kind online. So if a child is kind, they get a star. That they need to be taught how to be kind online. So if someone's unkind, it's great. It's a learning moment, which is, why did you say that? How did that make you feel? So just to summarize, because I can go on, I think soft skills for us is the most important thing. I think it's great to have the knowledge, but we need to just teach our children to be resilient, intelligent online, savvy, have digital empathy, so on.
I can't agree more. That's the key. I think what's interesting is that the lines between home and school have blurred. They certainly did during the pandemic, but even before, it's been going on for a long time. So I think when you talk about a proactive stance around media awareness and literacy, you have to think about a whole community approach. Students, parents, and educators, the 2 adults that spend the most time in kids' lives typically are their parents or caregivers and their teachers. And if those 2 caring adults are kind of joined at the hip to help kids navigate the digital world, it really makes a huge difference. You asked me to think about parents and kind of a proactive stance. So first of all, support digital literacy and citizenship in your schools. It's really critical. It's as critical as learning any other skill today. But particularly with older kids, so tweens and teens, I think the starting point is you have to embrace their world. You have to be curious. You have to wonder, what is it they're doing online? What are the sites they're going to? Who are they interacting with? And the way to do that without having them clam up is you have to genuinely be curious and non-judgmental. That's the starting point. And when that happens, it's quite incredible what kinds of conversations can take place. So to me, I think embracing their world and understanding it, getting a sense of it deeply is really important. I want to tell people about a new phrase, because some of you, I think, have been doing digital literacy and citizenship for a long time, but we've been beginning to hear we have some collaborators who are researchers at the Harvard Graduate School of Education who have been doing a lot of work with adolescents lately, and picking up on what Marc is saying, kids are not feeling great. They've done research with adolescents where they're beginning to talk about something new. They call it the grind. And the grind is this feeling that you need to be online constantly, performing, producing, even if it's things you love. Like if you're an activist, you have to be on every activist site. And if you're an artist, you have to be posting all your art. And kids are beginning to talk about it as the grind. It's exhausting, doesn't make them feel good about themselves. And it really comes from the issues around social comparison, which are, rampant at the moment and are enhanced by and pushed by the technologies that force kids to compare. So I think either as a parent or as a teacher, as you move into this post-pandemic world, it's not all about screen time. It's not all about addiction. Dig deep on the social comparison issues, because I really think that that's very connected to social anxiety today.
All right.
Brittany, I think it's between you and Michael.
Yeah, I'll jump in really quick.
We could take turns.
I'm like, no, I really appreciate you bringing up social comparison, and I'll speak specifically to the educators in the room. We think about human instinct and just natural, who we are as humans. We want to belong, right? And we want to belong somewhere. And, what better way to know where we belong by starting with knowing who we are. And so that's the approach that I think is really important to take when trying to combat media literacy and really helping students navigate that, is really helping them know who they are. And so our approach at KIPP Chicago is really thinking about building media literacy through creativity. We really believe that kids being able to design, kids being able to create, kids being able to dream, and really cultivate their sense of curiosity and their sense of creativity is really the start. When they have the opportunity to create for themselves, to think for themselves, it's really a moment where they say, hey, this is who I am. I'm inspired by what I'm doing. I'm excited about what I'm doing. I'm proud of what I'm doing. This is a part of who I am, and it's beginning to build their identity and develop it in a really positive way. And so some of the ways that we're doing that at KIPP Chicago is some of our teachers have really ran with this work. We have schools that are doing media shows, that they're producing their own news content, and they're talking about what's going on in their communities and in their schools. We have a Museum of Children's Art and Social Justice, where students get to engage critically with issues, social justice issues. They get to understand what the social issues are. They get to take a perspective on those issues, and they get to create art that's inspired by their perspective on those issues. We have teachers who are leading really incredible work around social emotional learning, students really being able to build up that resilience around who they are, so that when they do have these negative experiences or triggering experiences online or with media, they have the resilience, they're fortified, and they're able to really stand in their power. We also really have created an environment in our schools where we are really having affirming environments where students see pictures, inspiration, different media around the school, whether it be art or images or writing, poetry, all around. So everywhere they go, they're being fortified, they're being celebrated, they're being encouraged to just know who they are. Finally, we have a really brilliant curriculum that we're using, our 1619 curriculum, which again, what better way to help kids know who they are, but to actually do the work and dig into identity affirming curriculum. And so they're learning about their history, and all of these things are helping shape their experience with media from a space of confidence and a space of really having the skill set to navigate a world that sometimes is really challenging to navigate.
Okay, can I add one more thing? Okay. There's still time. Okay, so plus one to everything Brittany just said, and building a little bit also on what Linda said about listening to kids. We completed some research last year on the tween and teen audience kind of interest in media, and to me it was two things. There were some research findings around what they said was missing around media, where they felt that they had a close feeling of identity being represented in the media, or topics that they felt were missing, like mental health topics or just general social issues that were top of mind for them. And so there's definitely an interesting kind of outcome there. But to me, the other sort of behind the scenes research outcome was at the conclusion of our focus group interviews with these kids, and we interviewed kids all over the country. We deliberately went for geographic disparity and get out there in the world and not just kind of the usual places. And all of them thanked us for genuinely asking them questions and listening to their ideas and kind of bringing them into our process and sharing what we were trying to accomplish. And it was just a moment of realizing that kids often just don't feel consulted, and that itself is an interesting skill set. Obviously, for families to have those conversations around the dinner table, like the Making Caring Common Group talks about at Harvard, or what educators do every day at schools like Brittany's, or in the case of our work, producers of content for kids. They're going to be the best source for you to really understand what issues really matter to them, and involving kids in participatory ways can really be opening. So that's my plug on top of everything else I got said.
I was just going to add one thing, which I think, going back to what I said earlier about the emotional state of our nation, that when parents or teachers are overwhelmed, anxious, depleted of their resources, they look for quick fixes. How many of you are familiar with that? Like a quick fix to make yourself feel better? If you're a parent, how many of you ever use the quick fix with your kid? Like, here's the phone, here's the iPhone, right? Because it's easy. And so I think we have to recognize that these kinds of habits are starting with kids in their cradle. 1-year-olds, 2-year-olds are beginning to build these habits very early on, and it really is the result of parents who are looking for quick fixes to support the soothing of their child, particularly when they're depleted themselves and they're coming home from work and they're burnt out and stressed and tired. Finding ways to actually build positive connections is effortful. It's much easier to just delegate it to a device.
Thank you all. Were you going to add something, Linda?
No, I was just going to say, I think what's also important in all of this, this is behavioral change. This is behavioral work with kids, and it starts very young. Manjit talked about, kids kindergarten to 5. We're talking about babies in their strollers, what do you call it? Scrolling. And I think what is hard about this is that there are the skills that people think about, how to create a safe password, that type of thing. But then there are the attitudes and the habits of mind that have to be practiced. Kids have to practice pausing and reflecting before they send something. And so there's a whole body of really great research and educational pedagogy around thinking routines that we've found to be wonderful in all grades, K through 12. With little kids, it ends up being things that you as teachers are used to. Recitation, poems, songs. We have a poem called Pause for People. And so I think that we have to be patient with ourselves. We have to kind of be patient with our kids and recognize this is hard work, as Marc is saying.
One last comment. I totally agree with what everyone said. I think what's really helped us with parents recently, I just wanted to share, we've set a parent login. What we found when we did our research, just parents didn't know where to start. They were just like, well, what do I do? Like, what resources do I need to look at and what's relevant? So we've just launched, which has been really helpful, the feedback that we've got so far, and we've just recently done it, but we've launched a parent login so the parents can see exactly the lessons, that have been done in class, and that just sets that, starts that dialogue. So we're saying it's just as important as the reading book coming home when you snuggle with your child and read. Hopefully everyone does that. But this is just as important. It's a life skill where you can actually go over that lesson and talk about, what was done in class, and, you're not then quizzing them because they've already done it and you've got that dialogue. So I think that's crucial. I don't know if there are other products that do that here, but it's really helped us and our parents.
Thank you. I'm really excited about this next thread here that I'm going to talk about responsibility and advocacy, because throughout our discussions around this panel, I learned a lot about what we can all be doing to help improve this space. So we may not have time for both threads, but we're going to start with responsibility. So what responsibility do platform designers have for ensuring kids' well-being as they experience media? What would you want the designers of these platforms to know or do as they design? Very big questions.
Everybody's looking at me.
Go ahead,
Answer
Mike.
that question. Well, I think some of it goes to basic design practices that are participatory, that kids are very attuned to this stuff. And we're talking about in a room of adults here, except for the young one in the back corner, where we are talking about kids with them absent from the conversation in typical design spaces. And so they understand how they feel, and they make choices based on that. We've seen how kids, in our research, how they kind of fragment themselves across lots of different platforms that all have different purposes for who they want to be and how they want to feel. And so you can kind of see how they've spread themselves out. They're not really hooked on any one thing. And so I think there's discoverable data from talking to kids, observing them, working in partnership with them. So there are ways to really understand, and not only just to make a better product that benefits a business or an educational concern, but that it also actually makes something that's better for people. Then it's not that these methods are inaccessible. It's more of a choice. It's a prioritization of time and resources so that you're bringing young people into the conversation. Like I said earlier, they often are grateful to be consulted because they're not often invited into serious conversations or given the opportunity to reveal what they really think or feel. If they're inducted into the Natterhub universe, it sounds like they're going to be more equipped for those conversations, but it's not universal.
I can just say one thing quickly. I think the business models of these organizations they're for-profit companies that have a motive. And by no means am I attacking any company here right now, but there's a reason to get people to use these products, because then you get advertising dollars. And so nobody's going to give you advertising dollars unless people are kind of on it. And so that's just one piece of this. The other piece of it, I think, which is even more important, is just the knowledge of developmental science. That how do children's brains activate? And there are people who use science for the good, and there are people who use science to manipulate. And I think that the more we can inject science that has an equity lens into our companies that are building products, the better the products are going to be for children.
Okay, so I think we're going to shift to advocacy. And Linda, I think this question might be for you before we wrap up. So given the potential for what technology can do for kids, education and communication, we've seen it evolve and spread at an unprecedented pace. However, policies and laws haven't kept up with the pace with this rapid evolution and accessibility. What should be legislative responsibility around regulation and development?
Well, I think that what's happened in the past couple years is that the public is now perfectly aware that there are some downsides to technology. We know it in the context of our kids' mental health. We know it in terms of the health of our democracy as well. And so I think that this is a very special moment to seize in terms of advocacy, because the public, the companies themselves, by and large, and the policymakers all are saying, something's got to change. Kids are not at the center. Families are not at the center. People are not at the center of some of these product designs. And so we can let the industry regulate itself, which hasn't worked particularly well to date, or we can think about guardrails that are policy guardrails that are thoughtful, that don't quash innovation, but do put kids and families at the center. And there is a consensus now and energy around that has not been present in the 20 years that Common Sense has been working on these issues. So there are currently, and the UK is ahead of us on this, having put kids at the center in some of their design challenges. So the fact that Frances Haugen, the Facebook whistleblower, went public in the way she did around the industry having some research about some of the online harms for kids, and that not being accessible to all of us in the public and to researchers and product designers, et cetera, is one issue. The fact that Biden spoke about kids and tech and the mental health issues in the State of the Union is absolutely huge. That has never happened in the time that we've been at this work. And so I think there's hope of really reining in some of the platform features that are particularly troublesome. So we're calling for Congress to act in 3 ways. First, some stronger protections around kids' privacy and their data. Secondly, there's something called the Kids Online Safety Act. And this would impose a duty on social media platforms to act in the best interest of kids and to design in the best interest of kids. There's also a California bill that's being proposed that's based on the United Kingdom's Design Code Act. And they both have bipartisan support, and they are moving. And then I think finally the third piece of kind of legislation that's important is calling on Congress to pass what's called CAMERA, which stands for the Children and Media Research Act. This would provide funding for independent research on media and technology's impact on kids. And not just negative impacts, positive impacts like learning. Since there are, though, we all know there are wonderful things that come from media. It's been out there, it's got bipartisan support, it's been there for 5, 6, 7 years. It hasn't moved, it's beginning to move. So we at Common Sense are optimistic. We know we have to seize a moment. We're going to be very, very vocal about raising public awareness about some of these bills. And hopefully they will pass in the window of opportunity we see, which is not extensive.
Thank you, Linda. And if we go to commonsensemedia.com, can we find
You can, and if
yes.
you want to support any of this and raise your own voices, there's a way to kind of sign up to be part of this advocacy too.
Excellent. Well, the introvert in me is so surprised that the time went so quickly. So we have about 3 minutes left, and I would love for each of you all come to this conversation from a different angle. I'd love to close by hearing the call to action that you each offer the audience today.
I talked a lot. Let's start at the other end.
Excellent.
Oh, back to me again, look at that. Well, since we're here in California, in the UK of the US, maybe I think, and the Age Appropriate Design Code Act is actually being considered in the California State Legislature. I think it's interesting to point out that while privacy and security and safety are the floor, that there's also this notion of best interests of the child that's being introduced into language that is new here. I think the U.S. tends to be very kind of consumer focused, selling to parents, and the idea of what it actually means to be in the best interest of the child is actually a debate worth having. And so I'm eager for the folks in this room we didn't do a roll call at the beginning, but I assume many of you are educators, that you are part of this, that I think this is where you who know kids who are with them every day can help with your voices, and those of the kids that you teach, kind of bring them into the conversation. It's a good time for that.
Great. Well, follow on from that. I would just say, my last comment is just what I mentioned at the beginning, which is, developing those soft skills. If there's anything that I can do to help, please reach out. I'd love to help, the educators in the room. And I think another note that I just want to say on, role modeling, which is, obviously children watch us. So just be careful what you do. I've got 2 young kids and they're always watching me and I'm still learning, but we need to be the role models for our children if we want to, help them with media literacy and media awareness.
Well, she took exactly what I was going to say out of my head. I was going to say, be careful what you say, children will listen. Be careful what you do because they'll see.
You can say it again.
Yeah, well, I think it needs to be said over and over again because we're talking about behavior change. We're talking about the use of the parent being self-regulated. There is very good research to show that parents who are distracted by using technology, that's creating kids who are more irritable and engage in poor behavior. And so if you understand that you're the cause of that poor behavior, maybe you'll be more self-aware and engage in other kinds of behaviors to build connections.
I was going to say the same thing, so I will switch it up a little bit. I was going to say the exact same thing. Thank you all for saying that. Really, in thinking about what we can do to really protect our students, our children, I really thinking about our babies that fall in the margins. We know that anytime there's a challenge with any type of issue, we have students that are going to be exponentially impacted. And so really thinking about how we can design in the margins, for our students in the margins, our children in the margins who are spending that extra time on social media because their parents are working, or who do have, other challenges that they're facing. And so continuing to be mindful how we talk about body image, how we talk about gender representation, how we talk about diversity representation. All those things are impacting our students' identity and how they see themselves and how they're navigating in the world. And so continuing to make sure that we're affirming them and validating them and loving them. So that's what I want to contribute.
My call to action is let's design a digital world that we're proud to have our kids inherit. So for the product developers in the room, we can put kids at the center in what we create. To the families that are out there, we can provide the guidance, and the teachers that are out there guidance to give kids a fighting chance, because this world is their world and it's going to evolve, and we can't future-proof them totally, so we just have to be by their sides helping them.
Well, our time is up. I've gotten lots of signals that it's up, but I don't want to end this panel without expressing gratitude to the panelists. Again, for my own learning journey and for the incredible work that you're doing. I'm excited for us to bring a lot of these resources back to our school community. I also want to make sure that I publicly thank Mariah, because she was sort of the brain behind this panel. It was a very large topic for us to begin to tackle, and Mariah helped lead us along the way behind the scenes, so thank you, Mariah. And thank you all.